Meal planning for diabetics can be quite a headache, and I always get a lot of questions regarding whether it's possible to have a diabetic diet and whether there are certain types of food that you need to restrict yourself from as soon as you're diagnosed with diabetes. So whether you're taking insulin or not, diabetes is quite manageable with the diet, the lifestyle, and of course the physical activity. And so today I will talk about a very interesting technique that you can use to plan your meals, especially for those diabetics who are taking in insulin. Hi there, my name is Ndutawambura, and if you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe, put your notifications bell on, and let's keep growing this channel. So carbohydrate counting is a great nutrition concept that would help you in meal planning as a diabetic, especially if you're already on an insulin therapy. And this assists type 1 and type 2 diabetics to ensure that your meal planning is as easy as it can be. Remember, being diabetic does not mean that you start restricting yourself and start staying away from certain food groups. In any case, there is no one diabetic diet that we can say out there that this is the exact structure that you need to use for you to be able to meet your energy needs within the day. I have seen documentation of the keto diet assisting in insulin resistance, but necessarily you still do need your carbohydrates for you to meet your energy needs and continue doing your physical activities along the way. Now, the first thing that you need to understand as a diabetic when meal planning is your insulin to carbohydrate ratio. What that ratio means is the amount of insulin that you need to consume for you to be able to mitigate the sugar level that is being given by a certain amount of carbohydrates. So for instance, for most individuals, 1 unit of insulin would cover 15 grams of carbohydrates, so which means that their insulin to carbohydrate ratio would be 1:15. That means that, for instance, if you take 45 grams of carbohydrate of anything, then you would need 3 units of insulin to cover that carbohydrate. So once you understand your insulin to carbohydrate ratio, which you can get some guidance by your dietitian or your doctor, then from there, then you need to document each and every one of the carbohydrates that you have been consuming. Remember, the carbohydrate sources would be from things like starchy vegetables, can be from white rice, pasta, ugali, chapati if you're in Kenya, from potatoes, sweet potatoes, arrowroots, you know, the list can really be endless sometimes if you go in depth. And so as soon as you document each and every one of the carbohydrates that you have been consuming, then you need to gauge them within a glycemic index. And a glycemic index in a layman's language is pretty much the speed at which any type of carbohydrate source would be converted into blood sugar. So remember, when you consume your carbohydrate, your fat, and your protein, the carbohydrates are usually the first to be broken down into glucose that is, you know, converts again and becomes the blood sugar that we talk about when we are speaking about diabetics. Now, so you know, once you understand your glycemic index, then you can gauge the food sources that you have, the carbohydrate sources rather that you have on an index. And this index shows you which food groups give you a higher glycemic index. For example, the white rice would have a very high glycemic index, while the brown rice would have a very low glycemic index. So you want to go for food choices that have a lower glycemic index. That way your sugar level do not spike, you know, at very rapidly, and you need to mitigate that with a higher amount of insulin and such kind of a thing. So thing is, as soon as you understand the glycemic index, then you can be able to see exactly how much you know, of carbohydrates that you need to consume. So the other thing that you need to work with your dietitian or your doctor is to know how many calories you need to consume throughout a day for you to meet your energy needs. So your calorie needs would be guided by your age, your weight, your physical activity, other factors that the doctor might have considered. And for instance, if your doctor says that you need 1600 calories for you to be able to mitigate your blood sugar levels, then out of this 1600 calories, you only need about 45 to 65% of the carbohydrates from that amount of calories. So for instance, you will take 45% of 1600, which is 720 calories, and then you divide that 720 calories by 4. Remember, 1 gram of carbohydrates would give you 4 calories. So that's the reason why you're dividing by 4. So you'll take 720, divide by 4. Then you would get 180 grams of carbohydrates that you need to distribute within your day for you to be able to maintain your blood sugar level, within, of course, the amount of insulin that you are also taking up. So the 180 grams of carbohydrate really can come from anything. It can even be your favorite ice cream. It can be your white rice, your white ugali, as long as you are maintaining that amount of 180 grams. However, it is very much recommended that you take food that has a lower glycemic index. That way your blood sugar does not keep spiking on and off. So thing is, as soon as you understand that you need to take 180 grams of carbohydrates, you can distribute that from your breakfast, your snack time, your lunch time, your supper time. And for instance, if you divide that, say you want to take 60 grams for breakfast, 60 grams for lunch, 60 grams for dinner, then that means, remember, your insulin to carbohydrate ratio is 1:15. So that would mean that you divide 60 by 15, then you would have to take 4 units of insulin for breakfast, 4 units of insulin for lunch, and 4 units of insulin for dinner for you to be able to cover the amount of carbohydrates that you are consuming. So that sounds quite easy, right? So in case you're eating processed food or food that is actually already packaged, then you can be able to read the food label on the package and be able to calculate the amount of carbohydrates that you're consuming. Remember, each of the food that you buy out there, it's going to have a food label at the back, and the manufacturers will tell you that this food has got X amount of carbohydrate. So if you consume, say, 1 serving of that food, then you would be getting X amount of carbohydrates. Again, remember your insulin to carbohydrate ratio, and then divide and be able to know how many units of insulin would be able to cover this amount of carbohydrates. So as soon as you know that, you might want to ask me, how about when you go out and you're eating out, or you're serving yourself from a buffet, or maybe you want to have that pizza? Then first things first, if you're consuming pizza, remember that pizza is a high in fat from the cheese and the fat that is used to prepare it. So which means that the fat that you consume actually lowers the absorption of the carbohydrates in your blood, so which means that sometimes you might just consume that pizza and your blood sugar might not overspike, but over time it's going to spike, because of course the fat that you consumed is lowering the process of the absorption of the carbohydrates. So some diabetics will still take that pizza, however they would prefer taking half of their insulin, half of the units of your insulin before they consume the pizza, and then the other half after they consume the pizza. That way they can somehow maintain their sugar levels. However, depending on you as an individual, then you of course need to calculate and know how you're going to take that insulin. That way you can maintain your blood sugar level. So when you go out there, when you want to consume out something, maybe you want to eat out, then from the historical way that you have been consuming at home, then you can tentatively be very observant and see how much of a food that of a carbohydrate that has been served on your plate. So if you are serving yourself, I would recommend that you actually start serving by your vegetables, then serve your protein, and then end up serving your carbohydrate. Because if, for instance, you're not aware of how much of, say, your the mashed potatoes that is being served there, say if you don't know how to calculate or maybe observe and be able to estimate, then you can serve just a little bit. That way you're still partaking with the rest of the people that you're having fun with, but at least you're able to still maintain your blood sugar level correctly, depending on the amount of insulin that you're consuming. If someone else is serving you, then you can also tell them, hey, I would need at least half of the plate to be vegetables, at least the other quarter to be the protein that you're serving for the day, and the other quarter to be the carbohydrates. That is a rule of the thumb that you can always use for you to be able to meet your correct carbohydrate requirements. And so you can also tell them, that you would prefer that your protein is from the plants as opposed to animals, and you have more vegetables as well, such that you do not have to overthink when you're out there and you're having fun and you just want to eat out and have something different. So those are the concepts that you can use for you to be able to understand what you're consuming and your meal preparation at your household. So I do hope that you have learned something from this video, and until next time, please remember that you are what you eat, so please do it right. Bye bye.